So this sensation takes place all the time during our daily lives. So when we see so many things around, we are seeing our house, we are seeing people around, we go out, we go in the market, we go in the mall, we see thousands of clothes, colors and whatnot and episodes and everything. And we hear so many things like music, people talking, chattering, crowd talking about. So there are so many things going around. So do we remember each and everything? What do we remember? What we don't remember? How do we remember things and how this memorization takes place? What are these things we are going to study in models of memory? So we will be starting cognitive psychology, models of memory, that is in IB psychology. So let's get started. So the first is multi-store model of memory. It was given by Atkinson and Shiffrin in 1968. Atkinson and Shiffrin in model of memory talks about kind of memory storages, sensory memory storage, short-term memory storage and long-term memory storage. So we'll be talking about each one and how the process goes on. And you can look here in the diagram that I've made here for you. This is how this model looks like. So first we'll be starting with sensory memory. First is sensory memory storage. Sensory memory store means that there are a lot of sensations that are happening around us. It can be olfactory, it can be auditory, it can be visual. So all these sensations that are happening around us, this sensory memory does not process the information. It only detects the information, and only when attention is given to this detected information, only then it decides whether it will be going to the short-term memory or it will be discarded. There are two kinds of memory under this. One is echoic memory, that is auditory memory. Whatever you are hearing, that comes under echoic memory. And then there is iconic memory. Whatever you are seeing around, that is iconic memory. The duration, the span of this memory is very, very short. For echoic memory, it is only 0.2 seconds, and for iconic memory, it is only 0.3 seconds. Now to understand sensory memory, I'll just give an example here and explain. Let's say I have, just started from my school. My school is over and now I'm going in my school bus. So there is this huge ground where all the school buses are standing, and I just go and sit in my bus. So while I'm sitting in my bus, I am hearing so many noises. There are so many children around me chit-chatting. There are some children sitting at the back chatting, some in the front, and some outside the bus, some inside the bus. The driver is saying something. So everybody is talking to their own friends, and there is so much of noise going on. Even the music is going on in the bus. And then I'm seeing so many things. I'm seeing so many buses around. I'm seeing their numbers, how many buses are there. I'm also seeing there are so many children around moving. There are so many students. Some I know, many of them I don't know. Many teachers I see, the staff I see. Now the sensations, my sensations are active. My eyes, my ears, it's all active. Even my nose, olfactory. These are all active sensations. And now I'm seeing various things around me. But while I'm seeing all these things, do I actually remember when I get home? When I actually get home, do I remember everything that I saw? No. If somebody asks me, did you see this girl's face, or did you see did you hear what they were talking about, or how many children were there, or how many number of buses were there, I don't think I'll be able to answer that question. It is very difficult. So the reason is that though all these things were the sensations, they were all falling on my sensations. I was seeing all these things. I was a kind of smell was also there. I was hearing to a lot of noises, but I do not remember any of these things. Why? Because I was not paying attention to it. So here is the keyword attention. Now when we are going out somewhere, we're in the mall, in the park, or on vacation, we do not remember everything, single thing that we see or we hear. The only reason is why? Because the span is very less. It is only 0.3 seconds. So whatever we hear, it is only there for 0.2 seconds. Whatever we are seeing in the mall, it is only there for 0.3 seconds. And after that 0.3 second, it just gets discarded from our brain. It just gets discarded from our senses. We are not processing that information. We are just detecting that. So what happens? It is not further going to the short-term memory. My brain is not taking that and keeping it as a memory. Hence, I forget all these things. I only remember those things when it is falling on my sensation and I am paying attention. Now if I pay attention that what that girl is wearing in the mall, or what these two girls are talking while they just crossed by me, if I pay attention and listen to them, or I pay attention to what I'm seeing, somebody's nice fashion clothes or some nice dresses in the mall or something like that, so if I'm seeing something or I'm hearing something, paying attention, only then that memory gets processed further, otherwise it gets discarded. So this is what is sensory memory store. So for sensory memory, we have a study by Sperling 1960. Let's see what it is. So he did an experiment on sensory iconic memory. Now here in the box you can see there is a whole report procedure. So Sperling gave a whole report procedure, means that this is a stimulus, this is a box which is presented to the participants, and the person has to just see just for a second, and and they have to recall all the words. So this is to measure the capacity and duration of sensory memory. This is the aim of the study, to measure the capacity and duration of sensory memory. Now the box here, it is only flashed for 1/20th of the second. Now participants were asked to report as many as possible. This is the whole report procedure. On average, out of 12 letters, mainly people were able to recall only 4.5, that is only 37.5%. That is pretty less. Then he told that, okay, this is a partial report procedure. In this, there is this low tone, medium tone and high tone. Now, Sperling said that, sensory memory capacity was larger than what it was originally thought. Then he said that by visually looking, so the participant only had to recall in the partial report. That is only either the medium tone, the low tone or the high tone. So what was the result? The result was that in partial report procedure, you can report one row completely for all the letters very quickly before your memory is lost. So this is called as time delay. So how does the sensory memory last? According to Sperling, it inserted a time delay in his partial report procedure. The participants were able to recall one row completely. So the longer the time the delay is, the less you can remember from sensory memory, because what is happening when you are seeing lot of information, lot of words are there, sensory memory has such a small capacity to hold on to that within a second, within 2 or 3 seconds, the things are lost, it's discarded and you're not able to recall. So the moment you have so much of information, while it is coming from your mouth, it is getting discarded altogether. But if it is a small information, till the time you speak, and you have taken a small information partial report, you're able to recall quickly because it is still there for few seconds on your sensory memory. So sensory memory is very brief. For example, visual sensory memories are held for less than a second. So this is what was about the time delay and how better you can summary of the Sperling's result. This is a whole report procedure where sensory memory has a very large capacity, maybe unlimited, obviously, because in sensory memory, like I told you, at a given point of time, your senses are active all the time. You are seeing your buses, your people around in malls, students in your school all the time. Every sensation, every sensory input stimulus is falling on your sensations. So it is unlimited. It's just going on and on. But how long it can be held on to, that is very short. So in sensory memory, there is a brief duration. So the conclusion is that sensory memory has a lot of capacity, but it can hold on for a very lesser period of time. The next is STM, short-term memory. So after sensory memory, you sensed things around you in your environment and you paid attention to it. So from sensory memory, the information is transferred from sensory to STM to short-term memory. Now in short-term memory, you can hold the information only for 30 seconds. So it's a very limited capacity it has, and also the duration is very less. So capacity and duration both are less. For example, I'll give an example here and explain. Let's say you are sitting at home and all of a sudden somebody calls you on the landline. It's not mobile where the number is not coming. So it's some landline that somebody has called you on. You pick up the call and one of your mother's friend or somebody says like, hi, is your mom home? I want to talk to her. And you say, no, she is not at home. Can you just leave a message or you can give me your number? I can tell her to call you back. And she says, okay, I'll just give you my number and you can just note it down. Now you don't have a pen and paper around you. Now you say, okay, you speak the number and I'll just learn, and when she comes I'll tell her. So she says okay, and she just tells you, it's 9835674592, whatever it is. So something like that she says. And now here you sensed something that she's speaking something. This is first sensory memory. Information is coming to your sensory memory store. After you paid attention, because you have to pay attention, you have to give the message to your mother. So after paying attention, what happened? This information from your sensory store went to your short-term memory. Now from your short-term memory, it has only the capacity to hold on only for 30 seconds, the information. After 30 seconds, it will be vanished. So what you have to do, you have taken the number from this lady who is on the call and you are forgetting the number. So it's a 10-digit number. So what you do rehearsal. So how do we process the information in short-term memory and move it from short-term memory to long-term memory? By doing the rehearsal. So you say, okay, it's 98526, 98526, 98526. You keep on repeating and meanwhile she keeps down the phone. You rush somewhere to note down on some paper. So you take a pen and you write it down, 98562 something, something, something. So after that you've forgotten. So when your mom comes home and she asks you, okay, what was the number that she gave? Now you don't remember. You said it was something 985 something was there. I forgot, but I have written it for you. So this is what you did. You held on to the information which could only be there in your STM for 30 seconds. After that, you forgot it. And then you rushed and wrote it somewhere so that it stays for longer. Okay, so if you keep on rehearsing for a number of times, I'm sure if your mom comes later on, you would have been able to tell her the number without even seeing the number, because you rehearsed so many times. But here you did not rehearse too many times. You just kept it in your short-term memory for 30 seconds till the time you wrote it down on the paper, and the moment you wrote it down on the paper, it was gone. So this is what short-term memory is. So I told you about the duration, that it is only there for 30 seconds. Now let's talk about the capacity of it, how much information it can hold for these 30 seconds. So we'll be talking here about the terminology called as chunking. It was given by Millers. Now chunking is what? He has given a very magical number, 7 plus minus 2. Plus minus 2 means 7 minus 2 is 5 and 7 plus 2 is 9. So you can hold the information in your short-term memory. Only 5 to 9 chunks you can hold. That is it. Not lesser of course you can, but not more than that. So 5 to 7 kind of chunks you can hold on to it. Now when I say chunks, it does not mean individual digit or unit. It means that chunks. Like for example, if somebody says that the phone number is 9900083555, okay. Now here what you have done, these are 10-digit number, mobile number. Now you are not remembering it or keeping it in your short-term memory as 10 units, 9900081555. I think this is what I said. It's gone from my short-term memory. Okay, so this, what you do, you pair it up. So 99 together is one chunk. 000, because of similarity, this is second chunk. Then you say 81 is third chunk and 555 is the fourth chunk. So there are 4 chunks. It is not considered as one single unit but as chunks. Or for example, if somebody gives you a sentence to remember, an apple is there on the tree which just fell from the tree and it banged on someone's head. Okay, now here you are not remembering just the alphabets A, N, A, P, P, L, E, apple, and after 10 letters you just forget. Nothing like that. So 10 chunks you are going to remember. It can be either 10 words in a sentence, or it can also be 10 sentences, or it can be 10 letters. It depends on how meaningful the information is. If I give you random letters, you have to remember B, X, W, M, Y, C, R, T, V. Now in this is all random letters and it doesn't make sense at all. So here I can say these are 10 chunks. So I can remember, 9 chunks. You can remember only 9 chunks maximum. After that you are likely to keep forgetting. So you are only going to take care, or you are only going to remember these different chunks that are there, because it is meaningless. But if I make a sentence out of it, a meaning out of it, like TV, IS is ON on. So these are 3 chunks rather than 6 chunks. It is not TVISON. It is not 6 chunks. It's 3 chunks. TV is on, because it is making sense. And the sentence is also making sense. So it can also be considered as 1 chunk. So this is how chunking is done, and according to Miller, a person in their short-term memory can hold up to 7 ± 2 chunks in their memory for 30 seconds. So if we do the rehearsal, only then from short-term memory it can go on to the long-term memory. An example here, let's practice. You'll have better clarity. Now here I have put up some, for chunking hypothesis, demonstration 1 is there. Now there is a long line of letters given to you. I'll show it to you only for 30 seconds. You have to see this, and after this I'm going to change the slide. So now you tell me what all letters were they? Tell me in the serial order. Are you able to remember the 9 chunks, minimum 9 chunks, or no? Or how many letters do you remember? Please write in the comments below. Now here is the second demonstration. Same letters are there. Earlier in demonstration 1 they were all jumbled up. Now here I have written it in a way that you can make a grouping of this, and these are not just random letters, and it will make sense of it. Now you read, and only 10 seconds I am giving. After that I am going to switch the slide. Here I switch the slide, and now you tell me that what was the sentence or what were the letters. I'm sure you can recall better in demonstration 2 rather than demonstration 1, because in demonstration 1 all the letters were not making sense at all. They were not linked, or they could not be grouped together, so you remembered only 9 chunks. But here you can remember more than that, because all the whole sentence or all the letters are grouped in such a way that it's making sense. So you can remember more number of chunks here. Same chunks but more bigger chunks you can remember. This is the demonstration 3, which is making more sense. In demonstration 2, there were words but they were not linked with each other. In first demonstration, the letters were not linked with each other. In demonstration 2, the words were not linked with each other. In demonstration 3, this is a sentence. So you can remember it much more easily because it's making more sense, and you can do grouping much more easier. So as you know that in IB psychology, every concept that you write, that has to be backed up by a study given. So writing study is very, very important in your 9 marker and your 22 marker questions. So along with making you understand the concept, I will also be telling you which study to write in your exam to get good marks. Already done one study for your sensory memory store. This next study is to support the short-term memory. So we have studied the concept of short-term memory. Now let's do the study. So we already learned that short-term memory has a limited capacity, and it can retain for a very short period of time the duration we had studied. Now to prove this by the study given by Pivot, Supavitya and Yasri, there is a comparison of chunking method to enhance the cognitive capacity of short-term memory to retain textual information among high school students. So this is the study that we are going to do. Now here in this study, the participants in the study were 50 high school students who took part in the experimental design of online short-term memory assessment. Results very clearly revealed that the ability to remember 10 distinct alphabets and 10 distinct digits statistically varied, depending upon how the information was chunked. Like we have already done the demonstration, there you understood that when a unit is single, it is taken as 1 unit, but when the meaning is put to that unit, it becomes one single chunk. Like for example, if I say ZTA, now these are 3 chunks, ZTA. If I say CAT, cat, this together is not 3 chunks, CANT. This is together 1 chunk because it is a meaningful word. Or if I say cat is beautiful, so these are 3 chunks. Or if it's a sentence, as a sentence, it can also be 1 chunk. So going forth, the results reveals that the ability to remember 10 distinct alphabets and 10 distinct digits statistically varied depending on how the information was chunked. So to be more precise, the participants were memorizing the information when divided into 2 or 3 chunks more effectively than one full set of the information, that is 1 chunk. So it clearly showed that the mean scores gained by 2 chunking methods was statistically greater than that of 1 chunk delivered information. In this, the findings only relied on single type of information, so the further research could be done to explore. Now this is what I am telling you is the evaluation of the study. When you are writing the study, it is also important to evaluate the study, like the strengths and weaknesses of the study. We'll be doing how to answer these questions. So when you have written a study, if the question is about evaluation, you need to write the strength and weakness of the study. So the weakness is that, however, the findings only relied on single type of information. There could have been some more research, some more exploration on the same, and educational implications can be drawn from the present study. That is the positive or a strength of the study, saying that educational implications can be drawn so that in order to assist the students to memorize and retain learning material more effectively, it is essential to help classify them into 2 to 3 groups of information. So this could be done through the use of tree thinking, binary thinking, and computational thinking. So basically it means that this study which was done by these researchers, it can also have a good implication. We can help the students to learn how to chunk the information and learn better, so they can do better in their exams by doing the chunking system. So our short-term memory has a limited capacity of taking in information and retaining the memory storage. However, this can be enhanced by memory techniques, like whatever essay, answer, long answers that you have. So make it into smaller chunks and then you try to memorize it. You are going to learn better. So to allow the information to be retrieved and retained more effectively, it is supposed to be delivered into different chunks. This study experiments that chunking textual information in the forms of 10 distinct alphabets and 10 distinct digits are randomly selected into 2 or 3 chunks can help improve the cognitive capacity of student participants to memorize the given information more effectively. Education to depict how chunking method maximize students' learning potentials and short-term memory capacity. So this study also suggests possible options for future research that can help advance our current understanding of the cognitive processing information, and in particularly the enhancement of our ability to retain information in our short-term memory. Next in this, we would talk about serial position effect. What is serial position effect? It means that according to Glanzer and Cunitz in 1968, when a list of words or some information is given, we are likely to remember either the things that were given to us or told to us in the beginning or in the end, and we are likely to forget most of the times the things that were in the middle. So this is called as serial position effect. I'll give you an example so that you get a better clarity. Now let's say your mother tells you, can you dear please go to the grocery store and get me these items. Now you don't have a paper pencil to write those grocery items. You say, okay, you tell me, I'll remember. So she says, okay, get me onion, apple, tomato, cucumber, bread, cornflakes, mutton, meat, and so on. So she tells you a few things. Okay. Now you are trying to remember, okay, these are the things that she told me. So the first one was onion. I think you all would be remembering that. So the first few words, if you remember, first 3 to 4 items that you remember, that is called the primacy effect or the. So if a person remembers the initial part of anything, of an information, that is the primacy effect. Or let's say when your mother told you the whole list, then whatever you remember from the last which she told you, like cornflakes and bread and meat and mutton, whatever it is. So these things which if you remember well enough, then the other list, then it is the recency effect. Whatever you remember from the last part of the information, that is called the recency effect. Now in between, whatever it was, we are less likely to remember that. So this is called a serial position effect. Let's do one demonstration here, so that you enjoy it as well as you understand it well. Now if you see here, I have given this list to you. I am giving you 15 seconds. Just go through this, and yeah, I think 15 seconds are over, and I'm going to move on to the next slide, and here you go. Now you tell me which all words do you remember, and with is it the primacy effect that has affected you, or is it the recency effect, or is it the both, or you actually can remember the words from the middle of the list as well. So you can write your answers in the comments below. So next we did serial position effect. This is a concept that we have learned. To back it up, we have a study, very famous study by Glanzer and Cunitz in 1966. These researchers did a study to back up the concept of serial position effect. Now let's study what this study is about. Now this was the second experiment. It is very relevant to multi-store model, and for variations, the researcher introduced a delay between the presentation of the list and the start of recall. So the participants, there were 46 enlisted men in US Army, and participants were shown a list of 15 monosyllabic nouns and read each word aloud as it was presented. So as the word kept coming on the screen, they kept speaking it aloud. There were 3 experimental conditions here, and each participant completed the task in each condition. That is repeated measure study. So you do have to know this and remember this, that it was a repeated measure study, because in 3 experimental conditions, the participants were there in all the conditions. Now in the first condition, the participants began recall immediately after the end of the list. So as soon as they read the list, immediately they started to recall. Now in the other 2 conditions, the participant counted backwards in 3s from a given number and then began recall after either a 10-second or a 30-second delay. So in second condition, there was a 10-second delay after reading the list, and then there was 30-second delay after reading the list. Now the results indicated that the delay, you have to wait and then recall. So this delay between the presentation and recall, it had a significant impact on recency effect in the serial position curve. 30 seconds delay condition, the recency effect all but disappeared. Now this again supports the multi-store model's contention that memory consists of 2 distinct storage mechanisms, short-term memory and long-term memory. Now it was very well seen that in this study, the results throw strong support behind the multi-store model on 2 levels. First is that the researchers' findings provide evidence for multiple storage mechanism in memory called as short-term memory and long-term memory. Further, the results that show the primacy effect is produced by LTM and the recency effect is produced by STM. Now, why this happens? So when we start learning the list, the initial words when we learn, they are in the STM and we are still rehearsing, it goes to the LTM. It gets time to go to the LTM. But as we move down the list, as soon as we get to the lower part of the list, this part is just in the STM. It did not get time to go into the LTM. It is just in the STM. So when we recall, the last words that are recalled, those are being recalled by your STM because you recently studied, you recently read it. So it is just in your short-term memory. It did not get time to go to LTM. So these are coming out recalled from STM. And the initial part of the list, the first few words that were there in the list, that had time to move from STM to LTM. So when you're recalling, the initial part of the list is coming from the LTM and not from the STM. So the next is that 30-second delay between presentation and recall was long enough for the words to be displaced from STM. In fact, even a 10-second delay was enough for displacement. So this clearly shows that STM and LTM have functions independent of one another, and it also supports the multi-store model. So this is a quick review of the results. The results clearly show that in immediate recall, good primacy and recency effect was there. When they repeated, there was no effect at all. When intervals in between words were there was good recall because rehearsal was happening. And when 30 seconds were delayed after the reading the list, there was a filler task given to them. So there was good primacy effect but poor recency effect. Okay, also I am giving you in some answers more than one study, because in short answers, the 9-mark answer, you only have to write one study, but in sometimes when the question is bigger, the 22-marker questions, there you have to write, of course, 3 to 4 studies sometimes. So I'm giving you 2 studies here. In case you feel one study is easier than the other, you are able to, remember that one or memorize that one. So the next study that we'll be doing is, so the second study is Murdock 1962. It supported serial position effect. So Murdock in 1962, they studied the serial position effect in relation to short-term memory, and his research supports parts of the multi-store model. So now specifically serial position effects suggest that short-term memory has a limited capacity and duration, and that rehearsal is necessary to encode memory from STM to LTM. Now here the aim of the study was to investigate how the serial position curve was affected by list duration and presentation rate. So that means what is the list duration, okay, and how the presentation rate is, how fast the presentation is being done. Sample included 103 participants. All were university students, and both male and female were used in the study. They were fulfilling a course requirement in introductory psychology. That means all of them were psychology students in particular. And the study was conducted in group of 5 participants at a time. The procedure involved having different groups of participants listening to list of words with varying list lengths and presentation rates. Now lists range from 10 to 40 words in length, and the presentation rate was either 1 or 2 seconds. So presentation rate as the word was shown on the board to them either for 1 second or for 2 seconds. Now the words themselves were selected from a list of the most common English words, and Murdock had 80 different lists for each length rate combination, and participants did 20 lists per session over 4 sessions. These are quite a lot of data that you need to remember, but yes, it is important. Now after each list, participants were given 90 seconds to recall as many words as they could in any order. Now the findings indicated that participants remembered more words from the beginning of the list and the end of the list, which is known as the serial position effect. It clearly shows that it is supporting serial position effect. Here is the graph for the same. You can have a look. So the serial position effect itself is shaped by 2 more specific factors. The primacy effect, which refers to memory for items at the beginning of a list, and recency effect, which refers to memory for items at the end of the list. So in theory, the recency effect happens in Murdock's study because those words were still cycling through your short-term memory at the time of the recall task. We already discussed this initially. And by contrast, the primacy effect occurred because items at the beginning of the list had been rehearsed in short-term memory already, and then from short-term it went back to long-term memory. So because these words got enough time to move from your short-term to long-term, so from which they were accessed during the recall task. So presumably those items at the beginning of the list had been displaced by short-term memory, by incoming words in the middle of the list, but they had been rehearsed and encoded in LTM, so they were later recalled. Well, this is another graph here. Meanwhile, the items in the middle of the list were forgotten. Now, why the items in the middle of the list were forgotten? Simply because they had already been displaced from short term but had not been rehearsed for encoding in LTM. All added up, the primacy and recency effects as demonstrated by the serial position curve supports the multi-store model suggestion and STM has a limited capacity and duration that rehearsal is necessary to encode memories in LTM. Speaking more generally, Murdock framed the serial position curve as leading to a significantly higher probability of recall for items near the end of a list because of STM and slightly higher recall of items near the beginning of a list because of LTM. So I hope you understood this study, that a list is given, these are the initial words, these are the middle words, and these are the end words. So the initial words, when you are memorizing, they go to your STM and your brain is rehearsing it. From STM it goes back to the LTM, your long term memory. So when it is being recalled later, it is coming from long term. The middle words are usually forgotten because now this long term is replacing these initial words in STM, but it does not get enough time to go to LTM because these are being further replaced by the last words. So your last words occupy your short term memory and your initial words have already gone to LTM. So this is coming from LTM, the last words coming from STM. The middle words are usually forgotten as compare because it did not get time to go to LTM and it was soon replaced by the new words in the STM. So I hope this was clear and the study clearly showed the support the concept of serial position effect. Last is long-term memory, also called as LTM. So whatever memory, whatever information was there in your STM, from there it gets transferred to LTM if you keep rehearsing. So here the keyword is rehearsal. So in short-term memory, whatever information came in our short-term memory, if we keep on rehearsing over a period of time, we give a lot of attention, we keep rehearsing and we keep focusing on that, then it is going to go in the transfer to your LTM. Now talking about long-term memory duration and capacity. Capacity is virtually unlimited. It is more than the lifetime. So researchers say that we have not been able to identify what exactly is the capacity of the your long-term memory. It is just unlimited. So since you were born till now, whatever you have seen, whatever you have paid attention to, or there are things around you that you have heard about, music pieces, other people chit-chatting, phone numbers, whatever it is all there in your long-term memory. So that is because of the rehearsal from the short-term memory, not just from seeing things, I would say, but anything that you have paid attention to and you have rehearsed has gone to your long-term memory. Now in your long-term memory, what is the capacity? I told you it's unlimited. What is the duration? Duration is the lifetime. So this is a lifetime unlimited place of memory. That is long-term memory. The problem is it is not difficult to transfer the information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. It can go. Now your question would be, if that is the case, then why do I forget all the things during my exams? I'm concentrating, I'm rehearsing, I'm reading my chapter so nicely. I should be scoring 100 out of 100, right? But I'm not scoring A grade, I'm not scoring 100 out of 100. Why the hell I'm not able to remember when I sit in an exam? Yes, now this is because it's very easy to transfer the knowledge or information from short-term memory to the long-term memory. The problem here is it is difficult to retrieve. Yes, that is the case. It is very difficult to retrieve the things from your memory. It depends where it is lying in the memory. Let's say this is a big box, and in this big box there are a lot of papers and files and stuff like that. It is like this big box. Now out of this big box, whatever is on the top, you're able to retrieve easily. Whatever is deep inside, you have to dig out and take out the things. or sometimes you have to dig in so deep that you're not able to take out things, or you're not able to find out. So just like that, our long-term memory is just like this big box that is there, big storage box. Things that are lying on the top, like maybe what I ate yesterday, or what I just whom did I just speak to, and what all chatting we had on the phone with my friend. So all these things, or last month where did we go on for vacation, or how was the vacation, what all did we eat, and things like that. So anything that is on the top of your long-term memory, it is very easy to retrieve from that. As you go deeper, as the time passes by, it is still there in your long-term memory, but it becomes difficult for us to retrieve, to take it out from the memory. Sometimes you might not remember a piece of music or some phrase or quotation or things like that for a very long period of time. Then all of a sudden, after years, you say, I remember, many years back, this thing happened. I just remember. It could be triggered from some stimulus that you have seen, or maybe due to the smell that you have smelled recently. So it could be any trigger, or it just pops up to your mind, and you say, hey, I just remember now. Or you are trying too hard that, what was it? It's just almost on the surface. I'm not able to remember. So these things happen because there is lot information in the long-term memory, but we are not sometimes able to retrieve it, or sometimes memory is very, very complex. We don't know which information, when it comes out, it keeps it gets just packed in forever and ever, and we are never able to retrieve it. So that is about the LTM. Then your long-term memory is further divided into explicit and implicit. Your explicit is also called as declarative memory, and your implicit is called non-declarative memory. Let's do this one by one. What exactly does it mean? Explicit memory is when you remember something without making an effort. Like, for example, you meet somebody and you really like that person in a party. This is an implicit memory. Now you are not focusing on him so hard and trying to remember his face. Okay, this is how your brows look like, or this is how your eyes are, or this is the shape of your nose. Only then I'm going to remember. No, this is very naturally. You look somebody who is very charming, and you come across some nice restaurant, or some roads are there, or anything that you find it nice or beautiful, or maybe disgusting, whatever it is. Sometimes emotion plays an important role here. So implicit is memory where you do not make an intentional effort. It is very flawless. Whereas explicit memory is when you make an effort to remember. Just like your psychology chapters, or any subject, or any textbook for that matter that is coming in your exam. You keep on learning, mugging up, and it just doesn't go in the brain. That is explicit memory. You are intentionally learning it to remember it. Implicit memory comes in your procedural memory. Procedural memory is when you remember something very effortlessly. You don't have to remember things, and because it's a procedure. For example, your mother, when she cooks, she can talk to her friend on phone for an hour. She can keep watching the TV on the side, and simultaneously she can cook as well. She doesn't have to make an effort to say, okay, now salt goes in, and now goes in the chilies, and now I have to put this or that ingredient in the recipe. She is such a pro, she has such good skills that she's just cooking fast. And why? Because it's there in her memory. And it's flawless, and she doesn't have to make an effort. This is a procedure. Anything that is procedural, you're going from your school to home, or from your home to your friend's place, or your mother cooking. These all are procedures. So we don't have to make an effort. It is very effortless and flawless. So we are just able to do it without making much of an effort, which is called a procedural memory. Another is emotional conditioning. Emotional conditioning is anything that is related to the emotions. Like I said, somebody you see who is very charming, or very disgusting, or very rude or arrogant, you tend to remember that person because your emotions are attached with that moment or with that person. So the moment emotions come in, you're able to remember that event or a person very effortlessly. Comes in episodic memory, that comes under your explicit memory, where you're making an effort. There are some episodes where you make an effort to remember things. This is called an episodic memory. Episodic can be any event or anything that has happened in a time period, that is called an episodic memory. Under explicit comes in your semantic memory. Semantic memory is anything that is related with your knowledge, concepts and the facts. Like you have to make an effort to learn who was the first president of so and so country, when the First World War was fought, or this and that, your history, your geography, all the concepts of psychology, all the history or the geography, whatever it is, you are making an effort to learn. So all these concepts and facts come under the semantic memory, where you have to make an effort. So whatever we have studied in model of memory till now, in IB, you know that whatever concept that you write in your exam, it has to be backed up by a study. So I'm going to tell you the studies which you can write for your exam. In your study by Bahrick et al. To demonstrate the reliability of memory. This study that we are going to do is to support the long-term memory. Okay, so the aim of the study was to investigate the reliability of autobiographical memory over time, specifically the names and faces of the people that went to school with us. Now there were around 392 participants who participated in the study, and they aged between 17 to 74. Some of the participants had been out of high school only 2 weeks. And at the other end of the continuum, some of the participants had graduated 57 years earlier. Now, in order for the participants to be selected, they had to be in a class of at least 90 graduates, and there had to be a published yearbook available for that graduating class. Now, there were 5 tests for these participants. The first test given to them was a free recall test. Now, in free recall test, the participants had to name as many people as they could from their graduating class, and the time limit of 8 minutes. So in 8 minutes they had to recall as many people as many classmates names as they could. So this is a free recall test. Next was a photo recognition test. Now in this 10 cards, each with 5 photos. So on one card there were 5 photos and 10 such cards were shown. They were asked which of the 5 photos was taken from their own yearbook, and 8-second limit was there. If they didn't know, they were told to guess. Third was a name recognition test. In this 10 list of names, each with one name from the graduating class, participants were asked to identify the person from their class. Fourth was matching test. 10 cards, each with 5 pictures. A name was written across the top of the page. The participants were asked to identify the correct photo to match the name. So it was more like match the following kind of a thing, matching photo with the name. And last was picture queuing test. Here the participants were presented with 10 portraits one by one and asked to write down the name of the person in the photo. A 15-second time limit was there. Now let's see what the results were and why. The free recall test was always given first, and then participants were randomly assigned to the order of the remaining tests. So for each question, participants were asked to indicate their degree of confidence on a 3-point scale, 3 being certain, 2 being probable and 1 being a guess. That means they when they were guessing the name or the recognizing of a face or whatsoever, they had to tell how confident they were in their guessing. Now the results show that the participants who were tested within 15 years of graduation were 90% accurate in identifying names and faces. After 48 years, they were accurate 80% for identifying names and 70% in identifying faces. Now free recall was worse. After 15 years, it was only 60%, and after 48 years, it was only 30% accurate. This clearly demonstrates that memories of the names and faces of people in our past are highly reliable over time. However, it also shows that recognition is better than recall. So when you have to recall something, you do not have a cue, you do not have a hint it is a complete, blankly, it all depends on you. So you have to recall, totally relying on your own memory. So recalling is harder, but recognizing someone is easier. When you have a cue, you have a name written in front of you, you have a picture in front of you, it's easier to recall that yes, I know this person, I've seen this person, or I know this name, it looks familiar. So recognition is easier than recall. Now let's do the evaluation of the study. In some of the questions you might have to do the evaluation of the studies depending upon the question asked to you in your exam paper. Now the evaluation says that study was a cross-sectional study. It was done only one time. That is, it is not a longitudinal study, not done over a period of time. So therefore we cannot account for participant variability. Now maybe at that time the person was not able to recall pretty well, maybe for whatsoever reason. If it would have been longitudinal study taken for a longer period of time, maybe the recall or recognition would have been better or more reliable, I would say. However, because of the large sample size, we are able to establish a trend in the data that demonstrates that facial and name recognition has high reliability. So this is the weakness of the study, that it was a cross-sectional study and not a longitudinal study. And the strength of the study is that it had a large sample. Because it had a large sample, the data is more reliable. And Bahrick made use of the participants' existing memories, and the memories could be verified through the use of the yearbook. So even this is the strength of the study. The memory of faces and names is a very specific type of LTM and not be generalizable to other types of memory. Since we are doing this study to support the concept of long-term memory, this particularly recalling of face and recalling of names is only one specific type of LTM that we are studying, only autobiographical study. So only autobiographical memory that we are talking about. So here we cannot generalize this concept to the whole LTM. So that is the weakness. Now, since the participants provided their own yearbooks, there may be some contamination, even though the participants promised not to look through the yearbook prior to the study. So here we are done with these studies. So here we are done with the concepts. We are also done with the supporting studies of the same, which you can write in your exam very easily. Now let's do the evaluation of the whole multi-store memory model, that the evaluation as in the strengths and the weaknesses we are going to talk about. So talking about the evaluation of multi-store memory model, this was the very first cognitive explanation of memory. Now till now they had only talked about memory, that this would have happened or that would have happened. This is the first time that it was so strategically explained by the researchers, and also the studies were done to support this concept. So it was the first cognitive support that was given in this memory field. Second is that we also have different studies to support these concepts. So it clearly shows two distinct stores with supporting research showing that information needs rehearsal, and both stores have different capacity and duration. Third is that the model was the first to provide a testable basis for further research into memory. So first time we had something that is testable. We could test the memory and prove, we could come up with the evidence that this is how actually the memory works. The fourth is much evidence comes from lab studies, meaning they are reliable and can be replicated. Therefore, we can trust it, making the model more valid. So means it's a lab experiment. Lab experiments are very reliable because all the extraneous variables are very well controlled by the researchers. So it is reliable in that way. That means we know that it is the effect of IV on the DV and the extraneous variables are controlled. Another thing is it can be replicated. So it is a task that we can replicate. We can redo the study again and again whenever we want. Then we have Badley 1966 found we tend to mix up similar sounding words when using in our STM, but we mix up similar meaning words when we are using our LTMs. So STM is acoustic and coding is LTM is semantic. So when we are speaking, the voice, the sound of the words get mixed up in your STM, but the meaning of the word gets mixed up in your LTM. Now this also shows that it was STM and LTM are separate and independent. Now the next is weaknesses of multi-store memory model. The weakness is also supported by a study, Chalice and Warrington, 1970. So in your exam, if you ever have to, according to the question that comes in, you have to give a counter argument. For counter argument, we'll be learning how to write the answers in your IB psychology. For counter argument, this is very, very important. So do make a note of this study as well. The study by Chalice and Warrington in 1970, they studied amnesia patient KF whose esteem for digits were poor when read aloud, but recall better he read digits himself. Now, multi-store memory model states that there is only one type of STM, but KF suggests there must be one STM process for visual and another for auditory. Hence, working memory model is a better explanation as it includes separate stores. Then second is Peterson and Peterson 1959. This is also can be used as a counter argument for your multi-store memory model. Here Peterson and Peterson told that used consonant syllables with no meaning. In everyday life, we form memories relates to useful things like people, names, faces, and so on. Therefore, MSM lacks external validity as research findings do not reflect everyday life. So this was only one time the studies that were conducted, and that clearly gives it's a cross-sectional study. So cross-sectional study gives only one period of support only given in one period. But here the Peterson and Peterson is stacking that MSM lacks external validity. It does not reflect our everyday life. Third weakness of MSM is that it is oversimplified. It only tells there are like three kind of boxes or three storages: sensory memory, STM and LTM. So we have just one LTM store for facts about the world, semantic, another for memories like how to ride a bike, episodic, but it does not reflect these types in LTM. So he did not tell much about these different types of LTMs within the LTM storage. Then we have DRoot 1966. Again, for the counter argument, you can write, showed an expert chess players had phenomenal STMs for chess positions as long as they fitted in with known rules. So when pieces were randomly arranged, their recall was no better than non-chess players. This shows that STM and LTM may not be so separate and distinct. So according to DRoot, STM and LTM may not be very distinct and independent boxes of storages places in the brain. It is not that this is STM and this is LTM. So there is not much separation. There could be an interlinked as well, which is not explained in this multi-store memory model. Then the model the model is also too simple and inflexible. It fails to take account of factors such as strategies people employ to remember things. It also places emphasis on the amount of information that can be processed rather than its nature. Some things are easier to remember because they're more interesting, more distinctive, more funnier, and etc. But multi-store memory does not give any account on these factors. So it is too inflexible and simple. Well, the next weakness is that it is criticized for focusing on the structure of the memory system at the expense of adequately explaining the process involved. Now, for example, visual stimuli registered in sensory memory are thought to be changed to an acoustic code for access to STM in order to translate the pattern of the letter M into the sound EMM. The individual needs to access knowledge about letter shapes and sounds which is stored in the LTM. This means the information from the LTM must flow backwards through the system to the recording stage prior to STM. This suggests that the flow of information through the system is interactive rather than strictly sequential, as Atkinson and Schifrin suggested. So it's not just that your memory is going from sensory to STM to LTM. So it's not a sequential order that it goes. It could be interactive. It could be going back and forth from your LTM to STM, STM to LTM, like that. So it can be back and forth, but this is not explained in MSM. So that is a weakness of this model. So the next is theoretical evaluation of the multi-store memory. The theoretical evaluation is that this memory store multi-store model is reductionist in nature. That is, it is very oversimplified. In a way, it is good, but then because it is cutting down the whole phenomenon, the complex phenomenon of memory into simpler components. So it is a good thing, and it is very easy to understand. But this also means that important details can be lost in the oversimplification. Like I just gave an example of KF case, where sometimes we already spoke about that back and forth interaction is there between the memories of the information. But here in this model, it only says that it is in a sequential order. That is how it goes, in one direction only. So this is giving us what? A very oversimplified method of memory, whereas maybe memory is not that simple and it is a little more complex. Then incidental learning is not explained. Now the model itself suggests that rehearsal is the main process involved in encoding, but this does not explain incidental learning. Now people sometimes we just happen to learn something even if we do not rehearse. In this memory model, they specifically say that only when we rehearse something, the information goes from STM to LTM. But sometimes when we are not even rehearsing something, even then the memory can take place. That is called incidental learning. So this memory model does not explain anything about the incidental learning. Next is elaborative rehearsal, that refers to thinking about the meaning of a stimulus item like a word, and the semantic element may be involved in LTM encoding. Maintenance rehearsal, by contrast, refers to the simple repetition type of rehearsal that keeps a stimulus item cycling through STM and is not thought to be effective for LTM encoding. So the point is that multi-store model makes no distinction between these types of rehearsal, and therefore the model may be too simplistic. So here if you see the picture, it is showing the biological evidence. It is amygdala and hippocampus. Hippocampus you can see here in the back of the brain, and amygdala is somewhere in the frontal lower part of the brain. So amygdala is basically amygdala is responsible for the emotions and the memory. So there are two things involved in amygdala. One is emotions and one is memory. So anything that is more emotional in nature, or maybe we are more emotional about an incident or anything at all, we're likely to memorize it much better than things that we are not emotionally attached to, or not, our emotions do not get triggered for the same. So that is amygdala and hippocampus. So just a small, we'll be doing more details of it in the biological approach. In cognitive approach, this is just the biological evidence for the same. I'll give you some nice movies to watch after you're done with the concept, because you did a lot of hard work in studying this models of memory. So it's time to get a break. This is the movies that you can watch. One is in the Hindi, that is Gajani. It's a nice on the short-term memory loss you can watch. And the next movie is on 51st States. It is also on the memory loss. So it is based on true story. It's very, very fascinating. I'm sure you would have watched it already. Maybe it's quite a popular one. So you can go ahead, watch movies, enjoy yourself, and learn more about memory loss. And here we are done with models of memory. My next class is on working memory model. So working memory, please do attend my next class and subscribe to the channel if you like the video, so that you keep knowing that what is coming next.